اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك
لا شريك لك لبيك
إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك
لا شريك لك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك
لا شريك لك لبيك
إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك
لا شريك لك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأصلي وأسلم على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. In the name of Allah, the compassionate and merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Almighty. And may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His Prophet Muhammad, his family, and his followers all until the day of reckoning. This is the 5th episode in our series of Hajj. And this is to continue what we started earlier on the types of Hajj. And we already mentioned the 3 types, Tamattu, Qiran, and Ifrad. And we already started talking about Ihram or desecration. In this regard, there are certain things that are prohibited for someone who is in the state of Ihram. And these were named as 9, or some scholars extended that with some details into 11. 11 things that a person is not supposed to get into or commit when in the state of Ihram. First, one needs not to take off any part of his or her hair, including shaving for a male, or taking from the body hair, or shaving around the private parts. We already talked about shaving around the private parts before getting into Ihram, but once a person is in the state of Ihram, they should not touch their hair in the sense of taking anything away from it, either cutting or shaving. However, a person can comb his or her hair quietly and slowly, and if some hair falls because of that, there is no harm, because the intention was not to shave or cut the hair. Secondly, a person should not clip his or her nails, because they already did when they were preparing themselves for Ihram. Thirdly, a male is not supposed to cover his head with anything that is directly attached to the head. Now, some people understood this to be, it's not allowed for you to cover your head with anything, even with a space in between, such as having umbrella, carrying something on your head. Well, of course, carrying something on your head is not covering your head. It's not like putting on a hat, or putting on, as we call it in Arabic, ghutra or kufiya, to put something on top, a little hat, a big hat. All of that is not there, but if you put some umbrella to protect you from the rays of the sun, this is quite permissible. And a male is not also supposed to wear any fitted clothes or seamed clothes where this is designed to fit a particular part of the body or the whole body, like a full dress. It's not proper. But when you say makhit, it doesn't mean that anything that is in fact tailored, is because some of the part of the ihram clothes that we have today would be tailored, but it's not tailored to fit a particular body, but rather 2 pieces of cloth that are open. One would be used in the lower part of the body from the waist under, and the one is on the shoulders in order to protect a person's body from heat, from being uncovered. And that is what needs. Preferably be white, but they could be black, they could be green, they could be blue, they could be yellow, any type of color, but preferably white, as the Prophet ﷺ dressed in white during his own Hajj and during his own Umrah. Of course, to put on perfume, to apply perfume to the body and clothes after getting into the state of Ihram and passing the zone of Ihram is not allowed for a person. And let me tell you why a person is not supposed to dress in regular clothing, why a person is not supposed to put on perfume, why a person is not supposed to cover his or her head. It's just a reminder of the end when a person leaves and departs this life into the second life, into the hereafter. This is a reminder, and also to get rid of all what relates you to the normal life where you conduct your business and get into these things. So it is important in that regard that we are reminded in Ihram. Ihram is to come forward towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and leave any worldly matter behind. So that is the purpose there. And one of the other things that are prohibited for a muhrim is to kill or hunt wild animals or hunted animals, birds, gazelles, rabbits, anything of that sort. All is not allowed for a person in the state of Ihram. And we know that even hunting these wild animals within the zone of the sanctuary of Mecca or Al-Haram is also prohibited for any person at any time. But for a muhrim, it starts from the zone of Miqat, from Dhul-Hijjah. And I need to remind our brothers and sisters of the 5 mawaqit of where a person would take Ihram. We know that in the east we have Qarn al-Manazil or As-Sayl al-Kabir. This is for the people coming from the east, and also from the north it is Dhatu Irq, and people coming really from the northwest, from Rabigh or Al-Juhfa, and people coming from the west, it is the Red Sea before entering into the city of Jeddah, and people coming from the south, it is Yalamlam or As-Sa'diyah. And they may have different distances, some of them about 80 kilometers, some are to about maybe 150 and 400 kilometers. So the distances may vary from one place to another, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the wisdom behind why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam assigned these areas and zones of Ihram, so a person would not pass these areas, or even when a person is adjacent to that, such as when a person is not getting directly into these places, or if the person is flying over on a plane, or next time when the trains are going to be made ready to transport people. Obviously, the fast trains may not stop there. You just do intend the Ihram while the train is moving fast around that area or adjacent to it, and then getting into Mecca al-Mukarramah. One is not also supposed to get involved into marriage, either by proposal or by talking about it, where a person is not supposed to get into this or to get a proposal or to write a contract of marriage. A person, even when having his wife or husband, her husband, where they make Hajj together, they need to stay away from each other, and they should not have any sexual intimacy during the state of Ihram, not even to get closer to each other, even if that doesn't mean the matter of real actual intercourse, but rather when a person gets closer to just arouse the other person into this intimacy. All is prohibited, again, because you're leaving every enjoyment of regular lifestyle and getting into now the state of Ihram, where you are coming towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the sanctuary of Mecca, praising Allah, performing this great and mashallah rewardable, abundantly rewardable worship. One also, as women are not allowed to wear the gloves that fit their own hands, and they're not supposed to wear niqab, where they cover their face and leave some opening for the 2 eyes or even for one. All is prohibited for them. However, women need to cover, according to many scholars of Islam, need to cover their face, because their face is a source of fitna to the opposite gender, and therefore they need to, when in public, they need to cover, but not cover this with niqab, but rather to cover this from something that they put over their heads. And one of the obvious things that people have in mind is that they they want to dress in white for women, or in green in particular, or in black. There is no particular color. However, the normal dress that many women dress is in black, because black is a neutral color and does not attract the opposite sex. And that is the reason why women wear black, because they don't want to attract the opposite sex. This is the purpose of hijab, after all. So this is how it relates to this, and therefore they're not supposed to wear these gloves. But in case they pass by men, they may hide their own hands inside their own abaya or head cover or whatever they wear, in order not to again provoke the opposite gender. And these are, of course, some of the other things that are related to women. So all these are prohibited actions for a person to do when in the state of ihram. Now, if this person needs to move on now from the Miqat towards Mecca, involving himself or herself in talbiyah, but what do they say when they start their ihram? They just need to say labbayka umrah or labbayka hajjan wa umrah if they are going to do qiran, or labbayka hajjan if they're going to do only ifrad, or labbayka umratan mutamatti'an biha ila al-hajj if they want to do the tamattu. So based on what you say, it is actually to say it in this regard only softly, but even maybe to tell others around you in the company of, this is your intention, this is what you're going to do. I know that uttering the intention is an innovation in of itself. However, in this particular position, a person needs to just only utter it so that you'd remind yourself and you'd remind others around you of your intention. I have a break and I'll be back, so please stay with us.
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back. I would continue with where I stopped earlier, talking about a person completing his ihram and ready to move on. A person needs to start the talbiyah. لبيك اللهم لبيك لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك. Here I come, my Lord, to you, here I come. There is no partner unto you. لا شريك لك إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك. Verily, all praise and all bounties are for you. And to continue with these beautiful words of Tawheed in Umrah or Hajj, which is to announce and the Tawheed and to denounce shirk of any type, polytheism, taking partners with Allah, getting into the purified house where it was sanctified by Ibrahim alayhi salam, then by Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, in order to make it ready for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone. So that is where we stand there, and a person would start doing his own Umrah if he's in Tamattu, or to start his own Hajj if he's doing the Ifrad. And normally we call this Tawaf al-Qudum. That is the arrival Tawaf. If that person is making a Umrah, then a person would complete Tawaf 7 times around the Kaaba, starting from the black stone to the left, and then moving with 1 complete circle, and that is 1 shawt or 1 circle. And then a person needs to do 7, either directly close to the Kaaba or into the wider area under the building in the main floor of the Haram, or a person can go to the 2nd floor or even to the 3rd floor. So there are these options based on where a person would find it easier and simpler. Yes, as the farther you are from the Kaaba, the longer it takes, and you have to consider thinking that it may take you up to 3 hours to perform Tawaf around the Kaaba during peak times. It even may take you longer, depending on how settled you are and how tranquil you are in your own tawaf, which is important, not to push and not to shovel people around, but rather you want to make this ibadah free of any violation and hurt and harm of other people, or other pilgrims, or people who are making the circulation around the Kaaba. So that is the tawaf. And then after this, when a person is done, a person needs to pray 2 rak'ahs behind the station of Ibrahim or Maqam Ibrahim, if possible, if there is no crowdedness. Otherwise, if this is going to block the movement of the people in tawaf, one needs to avoid that place and go far away from the crowded area and perform the 2 rak'ahs of tawaf, and then start the sa'i from as-Safa. And I will come into full explanation in the coming episode where I will talk about Umrah in full details, but this is here only addressing the types of Hajj. And once a person completes his sa'i between the Safa and the Marwa 7 times, starting with Safa, ending with Marwa, then that person, if is in the state of Tamattu', one needs to shave or cut his hair. If it is a woman, then that woman needs to collect her hair and just only take like a tip of a finger from that collection of the hair. If she has like part of it long and part of it short, she should take something from the long, should take something from the short, and that would complete the Umrah for them. Now, they need to wait until the 8th of Dhul-Hijjah in order for them to start making the Hajj, starting their own Hajj. Now, once they are done with this, they can stay and involve themselves in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, praising Allah, praying 5 obligatory prayers in time, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not to get involved in anything wrong, any violation of the commitments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not indulging themselves in worldly affairs. They need to think that they are still in the worship of Hajj, even if they are relieved from their Ihram. And some people get involved so much into watching television, watching these naked women, or involving themselves in smoking cigarettes, or watching these terrible magazines, getting into websites where there are a lot of terrible and bad talk. One needs to refrain from all of this in order to purify their Hajj and make it sin-free. This is important for a person who is in this position, as it is important for anyone at all times, but particularly if you are in this ibadah and great worship. So if a person is not actually in Tamattu' and a person is in Ifrad or Qiran, this person, after performing the Umrah, would still stay in that Ihram. If that person is a male, all the earlier things that we talked about and are prohibited for a person need to be still in effect until a person leaves to Mina on the 8th of the Hijjah, and then from Mina on the 9th of the Hijjah moves on to Arafah to stand on the plain of Arafat all day long until sunset. And then after the sunset, a person needs to leave to Muzdalifah and then stay there at least until midnight. But a person, it's recommended for the Sunnah to even stay until you pray Fajr there, and then when the daylight is so bright, but before sunrise, you move on to Mina in order to start the actions of the days of Hajj, which involve the throwing of 7 pebbles to Jamratul Aqaba, the biggest Jamrah, the closer to Mecca, and to shave or shorten the hair, and to slaughter the hadi if one is having that hadi as mutamattu' or qarin, and to do the tawaf of al-Ifada. That is the pillar of Hajj, which is a must. And without this tawaf, Hajj is not valid. And it is normally done on the 10th day of the Hijjah, tawaf and sa'i. If a person has not made sa'i, if that person is in Qiran or Ifrad and has already done sa'i with the arrival tawaf, then there is no more sa'i. Only that person needs to do Tawaf al-Ifada from Arafah, and that would end that person's need for any sa'i, except if that person is in Tamattu, where he needs to do 2 sa'is and 2 Tawafs. This is important as a distinction between a person who is in Tamattu and a person who is in Qiran and in Ifrad. So that really brings the person to complete his Hajj, but rather after this a person needs to come back and stay overnight in Mina at least 2 nights, the night of the 11th, which precedes the 11th of Dhul-Hijjah, and the night preceding the 12th of Dhul-Hijjah. And if that person wants to stay even 1 more night, that's the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But in each day, that person throws pebbles at Jamrat, the 3 Jamarat, starting with the small one, the farthest from Mecca, and then the middle one, and then the big one, or Jamrat al-Aqaba, the one which is closer to Mecca, each one with 7 pebbles, saying with each one, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, and then making dua after the first one, the small one, and after the middle one, but not making dua after the big one. So these are the rights of Hajj for someone who is in Tamattu or in Qiran or Ifrad. And a person would need to do all of these things in the right way, making sure that a person is really devoted to the worship of Allah, such as if a person is in the state of Ihram, he needs to stay in Talbiyah and raising his voice with it as male. If that person is a female, she still needs to do the Talbiyah, however, in a lower voice. And on the day of Arafah, one needs to indulge himself or herself in total submission and dua and dhikr, and using this golden opportunity to be closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from particularly after staying and praying Dhuhr and Asr combined and getting some enough food to go by. And then from there a person needs to get so much into dua and supplication, particularly towards the end of the day, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the end of the day of Arafah would come down to the first heaven and would say to his own angels, what have my servants come for? I make you my witness that I am forgiving them. So all of these people, inshallah, by the grace of Allah, are forgiven, and the shaitan has never been seen more belittled and humiliated than on this day, the day of Arafah, because of the huge number of people being forgiven because of coming towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, standing on this plain, thanking Allah, praising Him, singling Him out in worship. All of this is so much important. So one needs to stay there until sunset, but not moving before that, in order for their Hajj to be good and to be complete in this regard. And then one needs to move to Muzdalifah. Now in Muzdalifah there are certain things that a person needs to do, which I will be addressing inshallah in the coming episode. I do have more things to do. I need to emphasize certain things regarding the types of Hajj, so I need to go into a 3rd episode regarding this. Until I see you in the coming episode, inshallah, in this series of Hajj, I leave you with Allah's care and protection, and I ask Allah the Almighty to keep you well in your iman and in your health and wealth by His own grace. Until then, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك
لا شريك لك لبيك
إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك لك لبيك
لا شريك لك لبيك
إن الحمد والنعمة لك والملك لا شريك لك لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك اللهم لبيك
لبيك لا شريك